LowKick MMA, and with me today is Dalton Rosta ahead of his fight with Johnson at Bellator 256. How's it going, Dalton?
It's going good. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. So we will get on to talk about your fight with Johnson soon, but I just want to talk about your previous fight. First decision victory of your career so far, and one of the sort of key pieces of advice that seems to be often given to young upcoming prospects like yourself is to get as many rounds in the octagon as possible early on in your career. How much of a benefit do you think that the going those full decision rounds with Guerrero has done for you so far?
Honestly, I don't really think it benefited me that much. There's, if anything, when I go back and look at the tape, I see opportunities where I could have finished the fight, where I wasn't taking as much risk as I usually do, given the opponent. But one lesson I learned off that is to always believe that you can finish the fight, especially in instances where I had his back and I could have choked him out, or had full mount and was opening up with my ground and pound. And I went for the safe bet on a lot of those, where I chose to keep position instead of go for the finish.
Okay. Would you say it's your toughest fight in your career so far?
I think I was just being more smart strategically. I think my pro career so far, definitely. But I had a couple tests as an amateur that probably rival that as well.
Okay. So one of the major talking points of the commentary on that fight was you changing camp to ATT. How much has that benefited you and impacted you as a fighter so far?
I mean, it's benefited me immensely. There's world-class coaches down here, world-class training partners. Every single round is a hard round. You can't get a round off no matter who you go with. It's the structure of everything down here, and then back home where I was having to travel to multiple gyms to get everything I needed. Everything's right here. So I think it's been a huge benefit to my career, and this is exactly where I need to be.
Has that been your full training camp for the upcoming fight at ATT?
Yeah.
How's it been so far?
It's been great. Honestly, this is probably the best training camp I've had so far, where I haven't really had any injuries. I've been training hard and training smart. So taking the time off whenever I need it instead of pushing through, just being stubborn. My last camp, I had a couple injuries that I didn't talk too much about. This camp, I felt good the whole way through. I'm peaking. Everything's coming along great. Any hiccups in training or anything have been fixed right after. And I'm feeling great, man.
Okay, excellent. So looking at your opponent, Tony Johnson, when you analyze him as an adversary, what do you see as his major strengths and weaknesses?
His major strengths, boxing. Obviously, I mean, he has a heavy boxing style. He was 10-1 as a pro boxer. I mean, it shows during his fights. He's heavy on his front foot. He likes throwing that lead hook. He likes throwing the check hook on the way back, and he likes loading up on his right hand. But I see some weaknesses in that as well. This is MMA. It's a different range. 4-ounce gloves change a lot of things. He can be hurt. I've seen that he can be hurt. I mean, everybody can, but he's been hurt on multiple occasions in the fights that I've watched. On top of that, his footwork isn't as good as he thinks it is. He doesn't cover distance too greatly. Another thing too is he's heavy on his front foot, where he's susceptible to a lot of kicks, and also susceptible to be taken down. And also, I'll give him credit for his takedown defense. I've watched a few fights where he stuffed takedowns pretty well, but at the same time, he's not fighting people that are me. He's fighting lesser competition, and I'm sure he has great training partners over at AKA to help him get ready for me. But at the end of the day, it's not the same timing. It's not the same strength. It's not the same technique or the style. So you can train all you want to try and stuff a takedown, just like Ty Gorder did, and we've seen how that went for him. So This fight coming up, I see multiple ways to beat him. I see I could beat him on the feet, knock him out. I see I could take him to the ground and TKO him. And I see I could take him to the ground and submit him. So to me, it's just a matter of time.
So you don't see a specific route to victory. It's just like wherever the fight goes, you're going to be happy where it takes it.
Yeah, for me, it's going to be a finish. I'm going to finish. I'm not going to make the same mistakes I did last fight. When a finish presents itself, I'm not going to force it, but whenever it presents itself, I'm going to take advantage of the opportunity. And like I said, I see 3 areas where I can get a win. So no matter where this fight goes, I'm confident that I'll get a finish.
Okay. So when you do get that finish, where does a win over Johnson leave you within the Bellator roster?
I'd imagine start fighting some of the bigger name guys, I got a few names in the back of my head that I want to call out after the fight if they give me the post-fight interview. I'll save that for then. But we'll see.
So one of the big headlines surrounding Bellator right now is, of course, their implementation of rankings. First, can you just get your thoughts on Bellator introducing rankings in the first place?
It's about time. The UFC's had it for a while. There's so many different websites ranking fighters on a regional scene and everything. I think it's essential to MMA. It's essential for the fans to see where every fighter stands. And I think it's a good thing. It's going to be a lot of, in my past 3 fights, given my 2 fights, my first 3 fights with the promotion were with unrostered opponents. Still, even at that point, they offered me better opponents. I remember my 3rd fight, they offered me a guy that was 4-0, black belt in jiu-jitsu. Then they offered me a guy that was 5-1. Then they offered me another guy that was 5-0, who's an All-American wrestler before Werder. Then they offered me Romero Cotton, who was 4-0 at the time before Werder, and Werder ended up accepting it. Between those 2 fights, my 3rd and 4th fight, I had like 5-6 guys turn me down, So I think with the rankings, you're going to be able to, kind of weed those guys out, the guys that are turning down fights. And if they're turning down fights, they're not going to be able to run away from it,
Mm-hmm. And how far away do you think you're going to be from breaking into that top 15? Should you beat Johnson?
I hope, I'd imagine I'd be in the top 15 already. I believe, are they ranking the top 10? I think they're ranking the top 10. Or are they doing the top 15?
I'm not certain, but
I'm not certain either. But if it was top 15, I would think I'd be in there for sure, And after this fight, if I wasn't in the top 10, I definitely should be in the top 10, especially after finishing them.
All right. So yes, like you say, you're aiming for the early stoppage in this upcoming fight. After that, how many fights are you looking at getting in 2021?
I want to get 4 or 5. I'm on a 4-fight contract. I would like to get 5 in this year. Get all 4, renew my contract, and get a 5th fight in by the end of the year. So we'll see how it goes. My last contract didn't go as planned. They gave me some space in between my first 3 fights, and then they gave me a quick turnaround between my 3rd and my 4th, and then my contract was up and didn't get my 5th fight because of COVID. But I'm hopeful this time around, especially getting a quick finish here. I'll be able to get a quick turnaround, and after that, maybe even another quick turnaround. We'll see. But at the end of the year, I want to get 5 fights.
Okay. So along those 5 fights, is it your goal to progress yourself to a fight for the title, a contender shot, as soon as possible, or are you sort of trying to grow yourself as a complete mixed martial artist first?
No, I think I'm a complete mixed martial artist right now. It's just there's obviously areas that I see at practice that I'm like, all right, this needs to be fixed. I'm still making mistakes here and there, and there's still things I need to work on. But I still give, how I am right now, I still give a problem to any fighter, no matter what. Because if you're a better wrestler than me, I guarantee you I'm a better striker. If you're a better striker than me, which I guarantee isn't by much, I have the power to make you hesitant. I have the wrestling to make you hesitant. I can TKO you on the ground. There's just so many different aspects to this game where, I can be competitive with anybody in the world right now, but obviously there's places I want to improve on, and there's a lot of things I want to improve on, honestly. But you know, that's only going to come with time. Right now, I'm just focused on fighting as much as possible. You know, getting as much experience as possible and making as much money as possible, honestly.
Okay. Well, one of the sort of major points that stood out to me, especially watching your last fight against Guerda, you've got obviously the NCAA background, but your striking, the head movement, counter shots was something that really like stood out to me. What's been the transition like? What's the transition been like, sorry, from wrestling into incorporating the whole bag of mixed martial arts into your game?
So here's something that a lot of people don't know. You know, when I was like 11 years old, 11, 12 years old, I started boxing. And granted, I only boxed for like 2 years back then, but I got out of it because when high school rolled around, the end of junior high, started focusing on just football and wrestling for high school, you know, and I would just do boxing whenever I could. It was like off and on. But as soon as I got done wrestling my senior year, I started boxing again throughout the summer till I went to school to wrestle. Then after I got done wrestling and playing football in college, I got back into boxing immediately. So I have a lot about boxing experience, and I had 7 amateur boxing matches as well. 7-0 is in amateur boxing. And I mean, a lot of people don't know that. So the transition to MMA overall between my wrestling background and the boxing background that I had was fairly easy, you know, and jiu-jitsu came easy. I dabbled in a little bit of that in my hometown whenever I was younger as well. And the part that came hard was the kickboxing, you know, just because with boxing, I was so used to, you know, being explosive and exploding into my jab and my two, you know, to set everything else up, to where I was getting chopped. My front leg was getting chopped a lot, you know, and then it changes the distance when somebody's throwing a kick, you know, you kind of, if they're throwing a head kick or a body kick, if you just block it without moving back or without moving your feet or anything, then you're still susceptible to taking damage. So it makes it harder to sit down and counter right away. So it's a little bit different, you know, it takes a little bit to get used to, but I mean, the boxing was there, the wrestling was there. It's just about learning the jiu-jitsu and learning the kickboxing better.
Okay. So that's almost all I got for you today. Just one more question on the topic of boxing. On LowKick MMA, we've been doing a series of predictions for the Jake Paul versus Ben Askren boxing match. I just wondered if I could get your take on that.
I think Jake Paul is going to win, honestly. Ben Askren obviously was a world champion in MMA, but we've all seen how he's wrestled. Anybody who's watched him or anybody's watched him seen how he's fought. He just wrestles the entire time, and it's not even pretty wrestling, you know. He turns it into a scramble. He turns it into like a little bit of a brawl. He's a real funky wrestler. He was never very explosive or very flashy, you know. So, and he said in multiple interviews, and you see him shadow boxing before his fights and hitting pads and hitting the bag. The boxing experience just isn't there, and it just seems like he never took the time to learn it, you know. And Jake Paul, although only 2-0 in boxing and newer to boxing, probably a few years in, he has athletic ability. He has a little bit of power behind his punches, and on top of that, I mean, there's a lot of people that'll beat Jake Paul. Don't get me wrong, but for where he is in his career, he's definitely better than Ben Askren, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So,
okay.
I mean, a lot of people on top of that, you want to get a little bit further into it, are talking about Dylan Dennis versus Jake Paul. I think Jake Paul beats Dylan Dennis too in a boxing match, you know. Obviously, in an MMA fight, it might be competitive, you know, because Jake Paul was a wrestler in high school. But in a boxing match, Jake Paul definitely knocks Dylan Dennis out, especially with the stuff I see Dylan Dennis posting, man. He'll post a minute highlight on Instagram, and it'll be terrible boxing where he lands 1 or 2 shots, and it's like, if you had somebody videoing you all practice long and you make a highlight tape and that's what you post, you know the rest of it was really bad, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, should you continue your rapid rise through the Bellator roster, would you ever be interested in a showboat boxing bout with Jake Paul yourself?
Definitely. I've been thinking about honestly taking some pro boxing matches in between Bellator fights, or if they had a layoff like they just did from December until April, where there's that 4-month layoff. I'm sure they would let me do it. They've let people do it in the past. So I was already thinking ahead a little bit, starting to get a little bit of pro boxing matches just to stay active, stay in competition, and obviously build my striking skills even more.
Would you look at an actual competitive boxing matches against other professional boxers, or would you maybe look at this sort of prize fighting, YouTube phenomenon that's going on at the moment?
Well, I mean, with the prize fighting, with the bigger names like the celebrities and the people that really aren't seasoned boxers, I would have to grow my name a lot more than it already is. And I'm early in my career, and don't get me wrong, it's been growing little by little, but there's still a long way from that. So I would take the actual competitive professional boxing matches first.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Would you like the final word? Any shout outs you'd like to give?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Thank you so much for coming on once again, and best of luck in the next fight.
Make sure to subscribe to the LowKick MMA YouTube channel for all the latest news, event previews, and interviews with some of the biggest stars in MMA.